It was a huge win for Boston College on Monday night, and the excitement hasn't slowed down yet.
You are Locked On Boston College, your daily podcast on the Boston College Eagles. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome. This is Locked On Boston College. I'm your host, AJ Black. Thank you for making Locked On Boston College your first listen every day. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Now through September 22nd, all FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Visit FanDuel.com to get yourself started. Today we have a jam-packed episode. We have a guest today, Mitchell Wolf of Eagle Insider, who was on our show last week. We're going to both talk about how we got these predictions wrong as Boston College defeats Florida State in a huge win, a win that shifts some expectations around this program. We're going to look at the defense. We're going to talk about the win itself and then some of the other goodies that came out of this victory. Mitch, how are we doing?
Hard to imagine being better. We went into this game thinking basically anything that wasn't as bad as the loss 2 years ago was going to be a win. And to come out with an actual win on the stat sheet was pretty remarkable. And, going into this game, everybody kind of figured FSU would find a way to bounce back after their loss to Georgia Tech in week 0. And they didn't. And I would posit they might have looked worse.
Yeah. So let's get into this. BC had the ball for 14 minutes and 10 seconds, I think, in the first quarter.
That's about right, yeah.
And Florida State ran 3 plays the entire first quarter as Boston College controlled the line of scrimmage, controlled the clock. And basically, it was a battle in which BC controlled the trenches, which is incredible given that you're going against a team full of blue bloods, high transfers, guys that they, dished out bags for over and over again to rebuild. And little old Boston College goes out there, punches them in the mouth, and wins this game.
Yeah, I mean, pretty much from the jump, from BC's first drive, you could tell, okay, they probably have something cooking here. And basically, if Trayshawn Ward doesn't drop that first wheel route, BC's probably has even more points and gets on FSU even earlier. But it was just so impressive to see them come out with a very cogent game plan from pretty much every aspect of the game. And compared to that to, last year's game, which was absolutely insane with, program record number of penalties, having to, get a fumbled kickoff back to get the ball again, to get a fumble for return for a touchdown, just to stay in the game. It was very impressive to see them have a plan that, I would say at times that I would say they stuck to it for the most part, maybe to their detriment, is mostly on offense. But at the end of the day, I just think they did not have any respect for anything Florida State wanted to do to them, which is pretty remarkable. And frankly, it bore out in a truthful manner.
Yeah, I mean, the fact that they were just running and doing a lot of simple runs up the middle over and over again. And it's not simple because I'm sure there's schematic things that I'm not, getting into. But it seemed like the heart of that line, they were just doing whatever they wanted, stopping them. And then we'll talk defense in a little bit, but DJ Uiagalelei, his head must have been on a swivel through that whole game.
Yeah, and just to stick with the offense, I thought it was interesting just looking at how they kind of built this run game. I think you saw a lot of similar schemes to what BC was doing last year in terms of the man gap style runs, a lot of power, a lot of counter. They added the little sprint action where they would run Castellanos a little bit one way and hand it off the other. I think Turbo Richard had a big run off one of those. And in the passing game, they didn't, and this is something they talked about in the broadcast, they weren't asking Thomas Castellanos to really play hero ball ever. Offensive, and we should talk about the offensive line. Offensive line had a banner day despite not having Logan Taylor and having to start Dwayne Alec. Him and Jack Conley, you wouldn't even recognize them compared to how they played at Doak Campbell Stadium 2 years ago. And, Drew Kendall and Ozzie Trapilo played about up to expectations, maybe surpassed them. And Jude Bowery, absolute lockdown performance. No pressures allowed, I'm pretty sure. PFF gave him an 89.7 pass blocking grade, which is insanely good. Absolutely protecting Thomas Castellanos' blind side almost perfectly. I would say like the mistakes the offense did make, there were a few times where they kind of tried to run some funky plays on 3rd and short. And most of them were basically giving Castellanos the option, like it was some kind of screen or something where if he got the throw, he could throw it, and if it didn't, it would just be up to him to run. And I think 2 of them turned into sacks, but they're not really sacks because he's running. It's not like an offensive lineman got beat badly. The one I remember is like the double screen where the defensive lineman thought he was going to his left, and so he turned around, and Thomas Castellanos took that as an invitation to run, and the defensive lineman just turned around quicker than Thomas Castellanos probably thought he could, and got tackled for a loss or no gain or what have you. But yeah, I think it was good that he didn't have to play hero ball, except basically until the end, where, and I think you're going to kind of see this as the games go on. I think they want to have Thomas Castellanos like be the closer for this team, because in those like final drives, they started pulling out a lot more of those quarterback run schemes that we saw a ton of last year. The power read with the jet sweep, the plays where they would have him roll out to his right, and there was a guy sliding across in the flat, and basically if the defender ran with the receiver in man, Castellanos had an open lane right up the field, and he took advantage of those 2 times for big yards, basically to ice the game away on the final drive. And that's what I think you want to. I think that's what Bill O'Brien is basically going to do with Castellanos, is say, we don't want you to have to play hero ball, but we're going to put the ball in your hands in clutch situations when we need it. We're not going to make you do everything, but when we have a dire need in a close game, you're the guy we're going to lean on.
And when you looked at the play calling, did you like that they kind of, I mean, how many passes attempts did Castellanos
have? 16, I think.
Were you, I know you thought they needed to be explosive, but they kind of went the other route with this.
Yeah, I would say I was mostly wrong. I was mostly wrong on that, but they were I was just surprised at how they were able to find explosives in the run game. I just didn't think that was going to be as easy as it was, honestly. But yeah, I mean, I think you're going to see the passing game open up eventually. I think part of it is honestly they didn't want to put too much on tape. You saw some concepts get repeated. I mean, obviously the mesh wheel concept they ran a bajillion times, and I think that's super encouraging, because now you look at Lawing as a play caller. He's a guy that basically says, if I have a matchup that I like, and with Florida State, they were down one of their starting linebackers who wasn't good to begin with, so they had a backup in, and they said, we like this matchup, and we're going to pick at it until you stop it. And frankly, Florida State never did. They kept hitting that wheel route and throwing into the back out of the backfield for pretty good gains. And, the one time Castellanos did really try them deep, I think if you watch the play, I think he overthrew him a little bit, but if you also watch the replay, Reed Harris kind of slowed down as soon as he kind of broke into the deep part of the field and was like past the defender. He kind of slowed down to look back and was like, oh, shoot, the ball's coming in. And then he tried to speed up and couldn't get there. Another one of the intermediate passes was the one that got tipped that would have gone to Lewis Bond and probably would have been a good gain, but gets tipped to the line and was nearly intercepted, which was very frightening, but very luckily it fell to the ground. But I think that you're going to see that open up a little more. And I think they basically said I thought the other interesting part was how for most of the early part of the game, they were using a ton of condensed sets. You saw they would be on like the left hash and both wide receivers would be to the left. They would have the 2 tight ends attached, and they would motion a receiver in and then motion another one across. And basically by doing that, you negate Florida State's athletic advantage and force them to play in a phone booth where that speed athleticism isn't as important, and you can win on strength and power, which obviously BC's offensive line can do.
All right. In a moment, we're going to look at the defensive side of the ball. This was our biggest question mark heading into the season, and they answered that call with a Blum. So we'll get into that in just a moment. Passion, drive, and patience, the formula for winning championships, is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. Superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has got you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home huge wins. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit. Only available to U.S. customers. This is Locked On Boston College. I'm your host, AJ Black. I want to shout out all of our everydayers, all of you who have made Locked On Boston College your first listen every day. I saw one of the 98.5, the Sports Hubs, Michael Felger, mocking that he would be rather sell insurance than talk about Boston College sports. Well, here at Locked On BC, we'll talk about Boston College sports every single day because there's people out there that want to hear about it. And if you're one of those, hit that like and subscribe button right now. Make this your first listen every single day. We're here joined by Mitch Wolf of Eagle Insider, part of the 247 network. And going into this game, we did not know what this defense was going to look like. You had a defensive coordinator who hadn't coached in the college ranks in years, hadn't coached the NFL in years, and had been bouncing around a lot of those, spring football leagues in Tim Lewis. Well, Tim Lewis was named by Matt Zenitz of 247 on Monday as his ACC defensive coordinator of the week. Mitch, what did you see out of Tim Lewis?
Well, to return to things that I got wrong / right, when we talked about previewing this game, I said that Tim Lewis needed to aggressively blitz DJ Uiagalelei and needed to change the picture from pre-snap to post-snap. So basically, show something before the snap, give the quarterback an indicator, and after the snap, rotate out of it and get into something else to confuse him. And he did exactly that, and it worked to a charm. Now, he actually didn't blitz as much as I thought he did. According to True Media, he only blitzed on 22.9% of Uiagalelei's dropbacks, which isn't that high. Usually you see that number be between 25 to 30% for most teams. And last year, BC was up around 33%. And based on what I've watched from Tim Lewis, that's usually where he is a pretty aggressive blitzer. But the difference was that he is a huge fan of these things called simulated pressures, or simulated blitzes, which I've talked about. I'm not probably in this podcast at least once, and I've definitely written about it. It's basically any play where the defense shows like they're going to blitz, but they only rush 4, and they bring guys from odd alignments. They bring, a safety or a linebacker from depth or the slot corner, and they only rush 4. So it's technically not a blitz, but the quarterback can be confused because you're bringing a different rusher. He might have called the wrong protection. He might still think it's a blitz, so he throws to his hot receiver, which can be, taken out for no minimal gain, or he could, just misread the play and then throw it to an area that he thinks is safe, and it ends up being an interception. And I didn't get an exact count from where you're watching the tape, but Tim Lewis threw the bag at DJ Uiagalelei in terms of simulated pressures and blitzes. Like, there were so many different types of plays where they would have 6 or 7 guys on the line, and then they would drop. There was one early in the game, I think it was on like FSU's second drive, where they had like 6 or 7 guys at the line, and they only rushed 4, but they dropped the 2 defensive tackles into like short zone coverage, and then everybody else was in man, which is a pretty crazy play call, honestly. But it worked. And looking at the coverages, you saw a lot more diversity. It wasn't just cover 1, cover 3, which is what Jeff Hafley was doing. BC ran a ton of quarters, like the true cover 4. They ran a ton of cover 6, which is cover 2 to one side of the field and cover 4 to the other side of the field. They still ran a decent amount of cover 1 and cover 3, but they mixed it up. They used different types. They showed a 2 high shell before the snap, and then they rotated into 1 high. You saw guys moving around. You saw guys like Carter Davis and Kari Johnson and KP Price be using these hybrid roles to confuse, even Sione Hala, to confuse the offense. And as we all saw, DJ Uiagalelei couldn't really do much of anything. He had his few drives here and there where, I will say, like, if you need somebody to hit a deep comeback from the opposite hash, he's your guy, because there's like 3 or 4 passes he completed like that. Those ones were on the money. I think the one that was went for a touchdown was that as well. But yeah, so you really just frustrated him. Obviously, that interception he threw at the beginning of the second half, which BC returned and then scored right off it, that was huge. But you also just saw the pass rush return to BC. They got 2-3 sacks, depending on how you score some of them. Donovan Ezraku had the game of his life, just absolutely embarrassing preseason all ACC offensive tackle Darius Washington, which is bullcrap because it should have been Ozzie Trapilo. I mean, there were tweets from everybody. NFL draft analyst Jordan Reed, Mike Golick Jr., basically everybody saying like Ezraku was just eating this guy for lunch. And Nato Akpala had a great game too. He actually led BC in pressures with 6. He got his sack. He had a play of the game where he took the dive after the shove from Terrence Ferguson, got up and then grittied away from it, which was incredible. And that was the end. The game was over then because Florida State had to punt with that penalty tacked on after the play. And Ezraku also drew a flag too, where he forced Uiagalelei into an intentional grounding. So on the back end in terms of coverage, you saw guys, have not the best days. Max Tucker gave up a few plays here and there. Breakwee Brown had a decently rough day, even though he was kind of rotating in for Amari Jackson, who had to leave for a bit with cramps. But a lot of the new guys like Kari Johnson, Carter Davis, KP Price had really good games. So I mean, it was just an incredible. And obviously, one thing we've talked about is the lack of mixed tackles. I think there were only 3. One of them was on the touchdown to Kentron Poitier. I'm trying to think of the other 2, but I can't remember them off the top of my head. But that's just such a huge difference. And you saw it in a lot of ways. You saw it tackling in space. Then the second play of the game where Carter Davis came from depth and just flattened or submarined the running back and threw him to the ground. So I think that's kind of that comes from the increased physicality in practice, because that was something that Bill O'Brien talked about. We mentioned with Craig Fitzgerald, the new strength and conditioning coach, just being more physical in practice to be more prepared for the game. And that paid major dividends against Florida State.
And in one play, I think that I have not talked a lot about, I was on yesterday's show and I didn't even mention it, was Cam Arnold ripping that ball out of, I think it was the tight end in the end zone. That was
yeah, incredible. That's a tough play, because that I believe that play is cover 6. So like I said, it's cover 4 to one side of the field and it's cover 2 to the other side. But the short story is that Cam Arnold basically has the tight end going up the seam, and he's the only guy there. And basically, and the offensive coaching point there is when that tight end's running that seam, if the linebacker turns his back to the quarterback, you throw it to his outside shoulder and dial it in there. And it works a lot of the time. But Cam Arnold played that perfectly, played the ball perfectly to rip the ball out. And I'm not sure if I guess that would have been third down because that forced the field goal after. But yeah, incredible play from Cam Arnold, who had 1 or 2 mistakes in coverage otherwise. But I mean, that was just a perfect play from a linebacker.
Mitch, before I put this show together, I was going to ask your thoughts on DJU, but you know what? I've been watching all these different sports shows, and the frame in which people are talking about this is all just about Florida State losing. So I'm not even going to mention it, because you can go watch a million other shows. They're going to talk about
it. I would say I've watched about every Florida State reaction podcast I can find. This is the South Park meme of Cartman licking up that dude's tears. It's been a very fun day.
Yeah. Shout out to Locked On FSU. I heard, I don't remember the guy's name.
Brian. I watched him. That's Brian Smith. It was an hour-long episode too.
I heard he went on a huge rant. So check out Locked On FSU when you get a chance as well. Now, in a moment, Mitch and I are going to talk about just some other little nuggets from the game, including special teams, penalties, and where should our expectations for Boston College football be for the rest of the season. We'll get into all of that in just a moment. You've heard us talk a lot about FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Well, we have something a little different for you. Now through September 22nd, all FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get a free 3-week trial of NFL Sunday Ticket. I'm getting ready for the NFL too. Can't wait to watch my Patriots. It's going to be so great this year. Well, you can get it all on the YouTube TV-based plan. You'll be able to watch every regular season Sunday night afternoon out of market game. All you need is a Google account and a current form of payment, and you can cancel anytime. Just go over to FanDuel.com. Patriots 4.5. I am smashing that under right now. You can too by going to FanDuel.com and downloading America's #1 sportsbook. This is Locked On Boston College, AJ Black. When you're done with this episode too, go check out Locked On ACC. I know I saw it on Eagle Insider. A lot of you guys on the message board have been checking it out. And make sure you go let Alex and Kenton know about their predictions about BC losing that game. Make sure you get in that comment section and let them hear about it. I don't know if I'm supposed to be doing that, but I'm instigating our fan base to go to some of our other podcasts right now.
Listen, you're driving engagement. That's what the job is.
Okay. I'm doing the right thing. Okay. Speaking of engagement, come over to Eagle Insider, part of the 247 network right now. I have 9-10 articles up about the game from last night. Mitch has already done his 3 stars. He's still got his film reviews. You can get all of that for like $225 a month right now. It's 75% off. Go sign up right now. You'll get all of our work, and we have more writers coming on board. It's going to be great. And you're going to get excellent, constant stream. It's going to keep coming to you from Eagle Insider. So go and sign up right now. The deal is going to end soon. Want to see you guys all over there. So check that out as well. All right, let's wrap things up, Mitch. There's a few nuggets here. Let's talk about one area that was a little mixed and started off really poor, which was special teams. The announcer said that Sam Candati had his punt blocked, but he clearly didn't. He shanked that first punt. And then there was a few other issues, like Dino Tomlin standing in the end zone. What was going on with special teams to start this game?
Yeah, this was not the best. I mean, let's get the good things out of the way. Extra points were great. Didn't have to kick field goals. Kickoffs were out of the end zone. No chance for return. Great. I think they did return one, but covered it well. Great. Got that out of the way. Punting, mostly good, except for that one. I think maybe his first one wasn't the best, but after the one that he shanked, he got a lot better. Even the ones that bounced in the end zone for touchbacks were placed quite well. Punt coverage was really frustrating because the first one, like you mentioned, I get that in college, it's only the ball can't cross the plane of the end zone and you can stand in it, but I just don't understand why you would do that. Just stand at the one, it's fine. Don't even risk it going in the end zone, because I'll get to this later actually, but just don't do that. That just doesn't make any sense to me. And then the other one was when Jalen Williams ran into, maybe kind of got blocked into the return man, and that drew a penalty, which gave FSU good field position. But it happens, but it's just like when you have a bad game going, and that's just like that's not good. But with Candati's punting, this, because of how many times this happened, when those balls land on the ground, they seem to land really hard. Maybe I don't know if it's just like the humidity of Florida where they just drive the ball into the ground and it bounces weird ways. Maybe because it's natural grass. I don't know. But again, I don't know enough about punting to tell you how exactly that's happening. Maybe he needs to get more rotation on his kicks or something. I don't know. But that was of all, we didn't much complain about. That was probably the biggest one. But other than that, we mentioned the penalties to go from 18 last year to 1. And again, I think maybe you could argue it was Jalen Williams getting blocked into the returner. And, there were probably times, I'm sure, you can call holding a bunch of times every game, blah, blah, blah. I will say, I think there were a few times the refs did give BC a pretty nice spot, or, didn't call a penalty when there could have been one. So, that's nice. But hey, when you're suing the ACC, that's what you're going to get. So, Texas saw how that worked for them last year. So that's just kind of how the chips fall for Florida State. But yeah, I mean, it was a very enjoyable game to watch, even though it's heart pounding, as, BC had those few 3-and-out drives towards the end of the game where you just hope the defense can hold, and they did. And, now we need to think about what this team looks like moving forward.
Yeah, let's talk about expectations right now. I forget what ESPN statistical system was out there, but BC now has a 12% chance of making the college football.
I think that was FPI, Football Power Index,
which is insane.
Yeah, yeah.
I don't know. We're gonna have a lot of fans out there that are gonna have really high expectations now, and I think it's fair. I think clearly this team is going to be better than 5-7. Mm-hmm. But where are your expectations now?
Well, so a few things to temper it. So first of all, this is a 1-game sample size. And I think that I was wondering how much this would count, but I think it's extremely important to recognize that BC not having any tape out there with these two systems, like with the players on the team, was a huge advantage for BC on both sides of the ball. Obviously they did a lot of the same stuff on offense in terms of running the ball and Thomas Castellanos and all that, but still, that, and on defense especially, not having that tape is huge. That gives BC a massive advantage. My other thing is that, and this is something that I brought up when talking about the Miami versus Florida game, is that the two worlds where Miami is the best team in the country and Florida is the worst team in the country, those two can't really coexist. For if Miami blowing out the worst team in the country means nothing, and Florida losing to the best, the quote unquote best team in the country, then means nothing. So I think we can all agree Florida State was massively overrated. There seems to be a lot of problems internally in that program. I was hearing some things that are but just like things are really falling apart there. I'm not sure they're gonna be able to get it back, but now BC needs to regroup, and they play, and we'll talk about it later, but I mean, they play a middling to bad FCS team on Saturday. And, I like I said to you, I am more nervous about the Duquesne game than I ever was for the Florida State game, because I was going into the game thinking, okay, we'll lose and that's fine. Now I'm like, man, if we beat Florida State on the road and then we come back home and lose to Duquesne, then I'm just going to be in a fit of rage. But looking at the rest of the schedule and how poorly the rest of the ACC is played, and granted, most of them, it's only one game, but looking at BC's opponents, of the teams remaining, the only one where I'm like, that is very much likely to lose is Missouri. Look at the rest of the ACC. Louisville pantsed an FCS team. So what, 62-0? Okay, we don't really know what that team's going to be like. Virginia and it was okay against an FCS team. Western Kentucky got absolutely blanked by Alabama. Michigan State barely got away with the win against Florida Atlantic. Cuse and Pitt, kind of messed around with some mid to bad MAC teams and eventually pulled away. SMU is hard to figure out. UNC, I do not think is good at all. Beating a missed field goal after losing their starting quarterback for the season, just bad. So, looking at this, like Virginia Tech, losing to Vandy in overtime. I just look at this and I'm like, man, if BC continues to play like this, and again, it's 1 game sample size, their teams are going to figure things out about them. BC is going to have to adjust to that. It's hard not to see the path might be back. The path might be alive and well.
Yeah. I could see 8 wins right now.
I'm getting unrealistic and right now because I'm like, I don't think 10 is out of the question, this is exactly what we do as college football fans is It's a 1 game sample size and you overreact as much as you can. But again, just looking at the schedule, it's so funny how, this whole offseason we talked about, the schedule's so hard. And, 1 week in, and again, it's 1 week and we need to take it with a grain of salt, but it's like, wow, the schedule is now super easy.
Yep. Yeah. You just won one of the games that we had talked about for 8 since it get released in January. Mm-hmm. You're going to go to Tallahassee. You're going to play Florida State with a new head coach. That's not going to go well. And we're BC sitting at 1-0. All right, Mitch, we're going to end things here. Where can people find your work?
You can find me at Mitchell T. Wolf, WOLFE on Twitter. Obviously, check out Eagle Insider. Like AJ said, the 3 stars is up. I'll have my game rewatch pieces coming out in the next few days. I was lucky enough to get all 22 basically hours after the game ended, so I've been watching that all day today. So we have those recaps, and then it's on to Duquesne. And like I said, they're interesting. I don't know if they're good, but they're interesting. So it's we'll preview them like we do every other opponent. We'll get the matchup report and the 3 preview out in the days before, and hopefully BC takes care of business because man, I can't imagine a bigger swing of emotion to beating a quote unquote top 10 team to losing to a bad FCS team.
Right. So I think there's gonna the sense I get is there's going to be a lot of fans of this game. I think the students, it was great to see a lot of the burner accounts are putting out pictures of, fans watching it in the mods and all that stuff. So
I saw a video of, I didn't watch all of it, but it was a bunch of dudes on the ComAv bus or something singing Walking in a Tommy Wonderland or something. So, I think that's going to be the most packed BC versus an FCS opponent that we've seen in some time.
So get out there, watch that game because this is you're the hope of having a big program. I think what we're getting at, and we'll talk more about it later this week, is you've got your coach now. BC's putting the money in. Now, as a fan, you got to show up. So get to those games, especially tomorrow on Saturday. All right, Mitch, this is AJ Black. Follow me on Twitter at AJBlack247 and make sure you hit that subscribe button here at Locked On BC. Check out Locked On College Football with Spencer McLaughlin after this episode. I'm sure he's going to talk about the BC game, or if he didn't, he talked about it yesterday. Check that out. We're on YouTube, wherever you get your podcasts, and follow the Twitter account of Locked On BC, where I kind of take more of a fan base with some of my tweets. I do more of the less journalistic stuff out there, and I think you'll enjoy some of that. So check out Locked On BC on Twitter as well. For Mitch, this is AJ. We'll see you all again tomorrow for another episode of Locked On Boston College, your team every day.